So this is part 2 of the introductory video for this week. If you would like to pull up the weekly plan and kind of go through it with me. So Monday we don't have school, so you don't have anything to do. Tuesday, you are going to explore the student standards and objective sheet, the weekly plan, watch this video, which you're doing right now, good job, and then start exploring the evidence of evolution poster project, which I'm going to explain. Wednesday and Thursday will both be work days for this project. All of the items are linked in here, and they're also going to be on Classroom and in the student materials folder for this unit. There is going to be an optional Zoom meeting on Thursday, and this is for Mrs. Proctor's and my class. So you just click on this link at 10 o'clock on Thursday, 10 o'clock a.m., and Mrs. Proctor and I will be in there to answer any questions that you guys have about this project, or if you just want to pop in and say hi, that's okay too. And then Friday is another work day, and the posters will be due Friday at midnight. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is the Evidence for Evolution Digital Poster Guide. Here's our standard at the top. I can communicate scientific information about how common ancestry and biological evolution are supported by multiple lines of evidence, specifically empirical evidence. So before we jump into this project, there are a few terms that we need to know, and these are in your Google Slides for this unit. So the first one is evolution. We need to understand what evolution is before we can learn about evidence for evolution. Evolution, like I said in part 1, is simply just the change in genes of a population over time. So evolution is a change in heritable, meaning traits that are passed down from parent to offspring, characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. The second term that we need to know, common ancestry, which is also sometimes called common descent. This is when one species is the ancestor of two or more species later in time. So this is something that, again, we can see evidence of. We can see traits that are left over from ancestors that are still around in species today. And so again, we want to think about evolution as a tree. So all living species, from bacteria to humans, we all share a common ancestor, and we all have characteristics of that common ancestor, that ancient common ancestor. And I know you might be thinking, what do we have in common with a bacteria? Well, bacteria have genetic material. We have genetic material. They have A, T, G, and C. We have A, T, G, and C. So there are some traits that we do share in common with something as simple as a bacterium. And so if you want to also think about common ancestry, like your own family tree. So if you have a great-great-great-grandmother, she might be down here on the bottom branch, and then you and your siblings and your cousins and your aunts and uncles, you all branched out from that common ancestor, and you have traits of that common ancestor, of that great-great-great-grandmother. Okay, and then 2 more terms we need to know for this project. Empirical evidence, which is the information received by observation, particularly documentation of patterns. You're going to see a lot of that, patterns in the evidence for evolution, and behavior through experimentation. And then the last word we need to know is compelling. This means not able to be refuted, persuasive, and convincing. So you're going to be asked to decide which piece of evidence or which pieces of evidence are the most and the least compelling. So think about that as the most or the least persuasive based on the evidence presented. Okay, I'm going to read this introduction to you. In his book, On the Origin of Species, Darwin included a lot of evidence to show that evolution had taken place. He also made logical arguments to support his theory that evolution occurs by natural selection. Since Darwin's time, much more evidence has been gathered. The evidence includes a huge number of fossils. It also includes more detailed knowledge of living things, right down to their DNA. Directions. You will create a digital poster using Google Drawings showing, in your own opinion, the 3 most compelling, so persuasive, pieces of evidence for evolution. You will do this by remixing the evidence presented to you during the digital gallery walk, which I'll show you here in a minute. Obviously, before you create your poster, you must complete the gallery walk. Follow the directions below to complete this project. So the first thing that you're going to do is this evidence of evolution gallery walk, digital gallery walk. Excuse me. And this is on a Google slide. you should all have your own copy that you can type on in Classroom. You're going to go through these. Each slide is a different piece of evidence, and then do the task that we're asking you to do. So the first one, fossil record, explore this link and tell me, how does this show evidence of evolution, or how does this show common ancestry? One or the other, but it could also sometimes be both. So some of these links are interactives, and some of them are YouTube videos. So go through those. Comparative anatomy, there's two things that you need to explore on that one: homologous versus analogous structures, and then something called vestigial structures. So go through this. On each slide, just type here, just bullet points, doesn't even have to be complete sentences. How does this evidence show, how does this evidence show evolution, or how does this evidence for common ancestor and or? All right, so do that first. And then number 2, review the evidence and decide for yourself what are the 3 most compelling. So which pieces of evidence do you think support evolution the best? Make sure that you're able to argue why they are the most compelling. So these are evidences that you need to make sure you understand. That doesn't mean if you don't understand a piece of evidence, don't pick it, because you should spend time and learn about that piece of evidence. Third thing, construct your digital poster. Everyone will receive their own blank copy of a Google drawing on Classroom. I'll show you what that looks like. Looks like this. So make sure you put your name here. In each box, you're going to write the name of the piece of evidence, your reasoning, your justification about why you chose that piece of evidence as being one of the most compelling pieces. And then you're also going to include a model of that piece of evidence. This can just be something that you find on Google Images. It doesn't have to be anything that you've created, with an explanation of that model. And then I'll explain the level 5 here in a second. All right, so you all get your own copy of this Google drawing. Type and put things in, and then make sure you look at the rubric, which I'll show you here in a second, during and after you complete your posters. And then your poster will be due Friday at midnight. Again, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are all work days for this project. Okay, let me show you the rubric. So here's our standard again, instructions, and the digital gallery walker linked at the top. Criteria: the student chooses 3 compelling pieces of evidence presented in the gallery walk. So this can't be just something that you thought of off the top of your head. There are more lines of evidence for evolution out there that we chose not to include in the gallery walk. So please make sure that you're only choosing the ones from the gallery walk. The student is able to argue on their poster why those pieces of evidence are the most compelling. Second box, the student includes models of the 3 pieces of evidence. These models should be different from the ones in the gallery walk. Don't just copy and paste the ones out of the Google Slides. The student adds a brief description of each model, explaining what the model is showing. My dogs are barking. Next box, the student correctly uses the terms common ancestry, evolution, and empirical. So we should see somewhere on your poster that you use those terms and that you use them correctly. Text should be concise, to the point, and written in bullet points. We really appreciate bullet points because it's less for us to read. And then the last box, the student creates an original work or responsibly repurposes or remixes digital resources. So this should be something that you make on your own. So you're taking this evidence and these digital sources, interactives, and YouTube videos, and you're going to repurpose them into your own poster. So this work needs to be original. The student communicates complex ideas clearly and effectively, so make sure that you're thinking of your audience, which should always be your peers. So make sure that your poster is written in a manner that your peers would understand. And then you need to use a variety of digital objects. So we're going to focus on the models for each piece of evidence that you choose. And then the last criteria, I think I just said it, the student publishes the content that customizes the standard for their intended audience, which should be your peers. And then level 5, if you would like, this is completely optional. In addition to successfully completing the criteria for the first column, select a piece of evidence that you thought was the least compelling, and then I want you to argue on the bottom of the poster in that space provided why that piece of evidence is the least compelling. Additionally, find a model just like you did for the other pieces of evidence and describe what the model is showing. And then make sure you also hit the other criteria for this component. All right, so that is all you need to know for the project. So remember, do the evidence for evolution gallery walk first. Familiarize yourself with these lines of evidence. Make sure that you're looking at the rubric while you're working on your poster, and double check that you hit all of these items before you turn it in, before you submit it. Don't forget about the optional Zoom meeting. So if you're confused and you'd just like to talk to me and Mrs. Proctor, pop into this meeting at 10 o'clock on Thursday. All right, and as always, let us know if you have questions, and I hope you have a good week.